Hi, this is Eric Vidal with the Marketing Scope. Today we have Ted Rubin with us. Ted's a speaker, writer, brand evangelist, acting CMO of Brand Innovators, and quite a few other things. And I don't have enough time to go down the whole list.
I prefer that you don't read the list. I spoke the other day, and I made the mistake. The guy went to my bio on my blog. Okay, that's like meant for informational purposes. I'm actually thinking of taking it down now. I was waiting 10 minutes while he's reading this thing. So I think you really kind of hit the nail on the head.
All right, perfect. Twitter handle, one of the few, is at Ted Rubin. Ted, we're going to talk about brand advocacy today.
Right.
And so first, let's start with your definition or how you see brand advocacy.
You know, I like to keep it pretty simple. Any person or even a company that likes a company's product and that shares that with other people is an advocate. It's really, really very, very simple. You can have 2 to 3 paragraph definitions, but it's really about building a relationship with a customer or any customer, again, a business, a person, company, whatever it happens to be, and that person feels good enough about your product to share it with others. Yeah. So it goes back to the basics of word of mouth marketing. The beauty is that we have word of mouth marketing in everything we touch these days. It's not just coming out of our mouths.
Yeah. And it's different now that everything's online and the use of social media. Now it's amplified.
No, it's amplified, and for me, successful social media marketing, really any successful marketing at all, for me is all about relationships. And the highest return on relationship you get, the hashtag I use is RONR, for return on relationship, comes from relationships you have with your brand advocates. Whether those be customers or they be potential customers who a lot of people don't buy products are still talking about them. And another really important segment, your employees.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So you have employees that can be advocates, you have customers, maybe even partners, but a lot of companies or brands are going out there and trying to get influencers or industry experts to be brand advocates as well. Can you give some perspective on that?
Well, that is a really valuable way to go about building your brand, as long as you do it, and I hate to use this word, everyone hates the word authentic, but you've got to do it authentically. And what that means is developing relationships with those people in one way or another before you go to them and say, hey, I want you to pitch for me. Now, otherwise you're just hiring a pitch person, and that could be Annie McDowell for L'Oreal or anybody else who's Michael Jordan and Nike or whatever it happens to be. But if you want experts and influential people who really talk from the heart about your brand, then it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to know and love your brand and discover it by themselves, but you need to build a relationship with them. You need to get to know them a little bit. You need to take the moment to look at their profiles, to find out what's important to them. If they live in New York, you don't ask them, how is it in Arizona right now? Or if they live in New York, but they've been publishing all over their social channels that they're traveling all through Europe, then you might want to make a comment about that. Yeah. So, we had a brief discussion about this earlier, and, when you're ready, I'd love to give you a perfect example. I don't know if that time's now.
That's fine. I was going to wait till later on, but I think you're going to get to some examples of what not to do.
I'm going to jump in a way not to do this. So, just recently, I had an outreach from Ogilvy, big ad agency. Now, you'd think they would know better, but truth be told, I believe that most of the big agencies don't really understand the relationship thing. Not that they don't understand it from a mindful point of view. They just don't exercise it because of the way that their culture is and the way they're set up to work with their clients.
A lot easier to do a media buy, spray and pray,
yes.
TV,
so
what have you, but that's a whole other story.
Humanitarian Day is coming up August 19th.
Yeah.
And I got an outreach that seemed kind of generic, but it was pretty deep, and my name was mentioned a few times from someone at Ogilvy saying I am one of the first influencers they're reaching out to and how badly they'd love to get me involved in this, and they want a pretty significant donation from me to do this. They want me to donate my social feed for 2 days. But they're going to give me access to all this great information. And okay, so I look at this and go, well, it's a pretty worthwhile cause. Big name, it's been going on for a few years. And I happen to know some people at the UN, so I reached out to the people I know at the UN Foundation, and they had no clue what this was about. They know about Humanitarian Day, but they didn't know that they were partnering with Ogilvy. They knew nothing about it. Again, fine, because this is a big company.
It's big.
The UN is big, just like a multinational corporation. Not everybody knows everybody. So I wrote back a really nice reply saying, sorry it took me so long to get back to you. I was reaching out to some people I knew to find out about this and the legitimacy, because we all get lots of outreach like this. And I said, they don't know anything about it, and they don't know anything about Ogilvy's involvement, so here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to talk about how we can work together, but I'd love to have somebody on the phone from the UN, from OSHA, who's involved in this, And I'd love to know what other influencers you're reaching out to. And basically the reply I got back was thanks but no thanks. It was, and in some ways it was worse than that. At least that would have said no thanks. It said, thanks for getting back to us. We'll let you follow what's going on. And if you still want to come to the event on the 18th in New York City, we'd love to have you. Thank you very much. That's it.
Ouch.
So, yeah, ouch. But also, I don't tend to be the guy that leaves things that way. I reached back out to them and kind of laid it out. I thought about it because I never react without thinking it through. I reached out to the people I did know to make sure that I was being polite and professional and that I wasn't putting off an aura in a bad way.
Sure.
And I wrote back and I said, so I guess that means that either Ogilvy has been instructed not to put anybody in touch with anybody from the organization you're representing, or Ogilvy doesn't want to put anybody in touch with OSHA, and you have no interest in sharing with me what other influencers you're reaching out to. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great week.
Yeah.
And I never heard back. So to me, this is happening at so many brands, and here's the problem. You're the brand, you're in charge. Don't let an agency say, we know how to do this, or this is something we do, or we've done it for a lot of big brands. Because in essence, in the end, they don't really care about your brand in that way. They just care about what their function is. So this girl's function was to find a bunch of people like me who would donate their thing, and all I'm sure what happened was she moved on from the next to the next. I'm really looking forward to when I publish this, and I am going to publish it, and I'm curious to see how many other people they reached out to in exactly the same way. But this is something that does damage to your brand. Before this, I would have, if nobody had reached out to me, I probably would have seen Humanitarian Day because I pay attention to what's trending and what's going on. And I probably would have jumped in with a few retweets or a little bit of help or something because, hey, it's cool.
And that's what you do,
And that's what I do a lot.
Yeah, you do
I believe in doing for others without expectation of anything directly in return. When it comes to things like this and a good cause and the UN, and now they've taken someone who was mild to maybe a natural advocate and turned me into just the opposite. Unless somebody reaches back to me, unless I hear from somebody, I have no interest in supporting this in any way.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'm talking about it here in this interview for an online media summit, and I'm probably going to write a blog post about it.
Yeah. Well, so this example goes back to what you said earlier about one of the best practices that you would recommend. And I think we have a sheet, by the way, that you can link to that gives 12 things that you should do, 12 most important things you should do to start your brand advocacy program.
Right, I believe
that's one of the 12, right?
It is. I believe it's the 12 most important or 12 important. There could be others that are more important than the ones I've listed, but I just want to be clear. There are basically 12 steps that can help you build brand advocates, connect with them in the right way, and maybe it's I'd love to go through some of them when we have some time, but let's just keep chatting.
Let's do it now. Do you want to go over a couple?
I like to say focus on the relationship first.
And that's a perfect example.
Which is what I was talking about, which means, it's simple little things, and I'm going to give it to you real simply. You reach out to somebody on LinkedIn that you don't know. Okay, I'm all for that. I accept a lot of LinkedIn requests from people I don't know. But first of all, my advice to you is always write a personal note. Something about that person, something about why you're reaching out, so they know you are, especially if you're a college student and you're reaching out to them, because I won't accept from college students. I will spank them a little bit and write back to them and wait and see if they even bother writing back to me. But even if you don't, that's okay, because I'm going to write you a personal note back. And the next email from you shouldn't be a sales pitch. By the way, I work for so-and-so agency. We do SEO, and here's the 5,000 different things we do.
I had two last week.
I get them all the time, but you know what? If you write back to me and start a conversation about now I post every day, probably 10 times a day, probably more. So it's not real hard to find stuff that I posted recently. Even just on LinkedIn, I publish every day. So make a comment about something I wrote. Do it 2 or 3 times. Have patience. Look, Eric, you and I know, I worked with you at Dynamic Signal. I'm on the advisory board since January of 2014. I helped them with a lot of things. I think we did a video together with Marketing Scope and Dynamic Signal. And, part of what I do at Dynamic Signal as an advisory board member is I make introductions, but I always tell them, now might not be the right time. Or, oh, you want to meet Eric? I'm meeting Eric in New York next week. Why don't wait until after I have a meal with him, we talk a little bit, I lay the groundwork a little bit. So build that relationship first. Have a little bit of patience. Don't just spray and pray.
Yeah.
Another thing is aim for ongoing engagement. Real engagement takes time and attention. And I see so many people, they reach out to me once, I never hear from them again. Or even worse, and by the way, that I can deal with, because we all have a lot of people, a lot of things going on in our lives. But how about the people that reach out to me, start a conversation, ask me a question? Brands do this every day. Because the agencies say, hey, ask questions on your Facebook page. You'll get more engagement, more comments, it'll bring it up more in the feed, right? And then when you give an answer,
I know.
they don't even respond to you. They don't like it, number one. Number two is, how about when you give an answer but you ask a question in return?
I do that all the time.
And
I don't do that often anymore because I get tired of doing it. And then where's the...
You never hear back, but more
Where's
importantly,
the interaction?
when you ask a question, would you do this right here? Hey, Eric, how you doing? Listen, you want to go out to dinner tonight? Get up and leave. No way. I'd wait for you to answer me. I mean, but this is happening online all the time. But here's one of the beautiful things about being online. You're not under the gun. You ask me a question now, face to face. I can't sit here for 5 minutes and think of the answer. You're going to look at me like I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But you can do that online, and actually 5 minutes is a quick response.
Yeah,
So you can look at things, you can cut and paste something. If you look, there's nothing wrong with having some standard answers for standard questions. But don't ask a question, don't shake my hand and start talking to me, and then walk away in the middle. And start putting more energy in the give column than the take column.
Yeah.
This goes to what I mentioned earlier. Do for others without expectation of anything directly in return. And by the way, you will get it returned. You might not get it direct from that person. There's a lot of what goes around comes around on the web. I mean, there really is. And I have people all the time. Just the other day, someone reached out to me and said, Ted, I noticed your blog is in Spanish. I'd love to translate it and put it in Spanish for you. And I said, I love that idea. I have a very big Hispanic Latino following. But the problem is I don't have a budget for that. They said, oh no, we don't mean we want you to pay us. Just maybe give us a little credit or something like that. I said, well, why would you do that? They said, because we've been watching you online for 3 years, and all you do is for other people. We'd love to do something for you. Whenever anybody asks you what they can do for you, you say you're doing it right now just by engaging. Now, obviously, if you can't be authentic in doing that, if you're biting at the bit, look, I know salespeople, you have quotas, you've got bosses to answer to, but I'm telling you, if you take the time up front, you build your sales funnel, you'll start getting people down the line of that funnel who you do have relationships with. In the first few weeks or few months, it might be slow, but you'll start doing that. And then, for God's sake, look in the mirror, Eric. Ask yourself, would I want to be my friend? Would I want to buy from me? Would I trust me?
That's like number 3 or 4 on your list, right?
I think it's number 4.
Okay, yeah.
So, look, I don't want to take everybody's time here with it, but, don't make any assumptions. Ask first, then listen, then ask again. I like to tell people, you don't just listen with your ears. You listen with your ears, your eyes, and there's one more very important part that most people fail to listen with. You listen with your heart. You listen with your heart, because that tells you how someone's feeling, what they're doing. How does it affect you? And if you're a brand and you stop thinking like a marketer for once and start thinking like a consumer, like your customer, really put yourself in your customer's shoes. Talk to people that are actually in that demographic. So I got this really cool ex-business partner named John Andrews. John was at Walmart, founded the 11 Moms, took that and built Collective Bias out of the concept of connecting brands with bloggers and with retailers. And we'd be in meetings all the time. And John's an old line CPG marketer, been in a lot of companies, and people would look at us and go,
I know John from Arkansas.
Right.
Yeah.
And John would say, they'd look at John and go, hey, listen, John, you run all these companies, you do all this stuff. What do you think of this campaign? He'd look at him and go, well, by the way, he's from North Carolina. I do his accent really bad, and whenever I hang around with him too much, I started doing it. My daughters used to look at me and say, Daddy, why are you talking that way? But John would say, why are you all asking me? He goes, I'm 45 and a guy. We're looking to sell 27-year-old women. Why aren't we reaching out to 27-year-old women and not old school research? We've got a community of 4,000 bloggers, and we've got probably a few hundred of them in that category. Let's just ask them what they think. Hello? You could be doing that online every single day. And then you take that and you integrate it into your learning.
And of course, if they ask a question back, you be on top of it.
Hello, and look, here's another reason. And by the way, part of this problem with agencies isn't because they're not smart or they don't get it. It's because the way their model works, the way their culture is, they get paid by a brand. And they get paid for their time. And when there's no more money to pay, or if it's not in the budget for what you get paid for, then they can't do it. So they reach out to bloggers about a campaign, and a couple of things happen. First of all, they're only paid to reach out to them and give them the information, not to pay to talk to them and chat with them. And influencers want to be talked to. They want to be, when I say wined and dined, I don't mean money. I just mean they want to be massaged a little bit. They want to feel like they know. People say nobody likes to know a company. Everybody wants to know a person at that company. Everyone wants to know a guy or a gal or somebody
my guy at this company.
Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the problem with agencies is that there's no budget for them to bill, and if they're not billing, they can't be doing. So either there's no budget to begin with, or the campaign ends, and they stop answering questions because, I'm sorry, I can't take the call from bloggers, because truth be told, if they put that in their monthly numbers, and there's no dollars associated with it, they have a problem.
All right, so Ted, we've gone over some of the techniques, some of the best practices. We haven't gone over all 12. We've gone over a few. What about some tools or technologies out there that can help? I mean, that's kind of helping to change the game a little bit, right? Or at least make it easier.
Changing the game,
or is it change it in the wrong direction?
There's two sides to everything. So actually, this one I think is like a triangle. So on the one hand, there are great tools that allow you to scale things and do more things actively and know what people are saying and how they're saying it. And there are great dashboards, and of course you have to be able to afford those tools. But there are some free tools. I mean, I use Hootsuite. Doesn't cost me very much. I use Buffer. I use Crowdfire. For a number of different things. Personally, with a couple of interns I work with, my own things.
Sure.
And other companies have much bigger budgets. But the other side of that. Then there's a side that, as CMOs, as marketing people, we do have to understand technology because it's becoming more a part of what you do. But here's the problem. The problem is you start doing that and you forget about the connection and relationship and you forget about the heart. And the truth of the matter is, some of the most successful CMOs in this country make the majority of their decisions based on their judgment. Now, data and technology informs judgment. But it isn't the judgment itself. And if you start relying too much on the numbers and you don't get involved, Peter Lynch, one of the best investors of all time, Fidelity Investments, he started making his best investments about products his wife would come home and talk about. He would go to stores to see something and say, hey, this Walmart thing might be something. That's where he did most of his research. I'm not saying he ignored the numbers. Obviously, if the numbers were a disaster, he wouldn't get involved. But everything else being equal, he would look at the companies that had a passion, that he saw something in them. And these tools are great, and like I said, I use them every day. I couldn't live without Hootsuite with all that I do. I just want to make sure that the marketers learn how to use this technology, they learn how to read the data, but they always remember that everything's open to interpretation, and you've got to go with your gut sometimes, which I think is like one step beyond judgment. I think judgment is when your mind is still involved. I think gut instinct, by the way, your mind affects your gut because it's talking to it. But your gut is when you feel something. And I will tell you some of the best decisions are made based on gut, in my opinion.
So my mind tells me I want to go back over some of the 14 best practices, but my gut is telling me I want to go back to some stories. You gave a good example of the agency,
right?
And maybe what not
to
do.
Let me tell you
Can you give me a couple examples
of
what some brands are doing that are having success with and that you kind of admire?
Let me give you a great example. Okay, so I'm a divorced dad. I have 2 teenage daughters. I had to fight to keep them in my life, and when they were just becoming teens, it was really important to me to reconnect with them. I'd been kept away from them. I didn't see them as much as I wanted to. So time with them was very crucial to me and how things turned out. So what I've learned is that customer service is one of the best times to market to people, and most companies overlook this. It's a separate silo. They're rewarded differently, and I liken this
smaller budgets.
Right. I liken this to when my daughters. So to me, the reason I love customer service is you have a problem. You're listening to every word that comes out of my mouth until I tell you what you want to hear. So I have a captive audience. So I liken that to my daughters when they want money or they want something that's expensive. They know that if they just put their hand out and turn around, nothing's going to hit the palm. That they've got to pay attention to me. Now, I'm not talking about leveraging that by saying, do this or I won't do this. But it means I can now market to them. So my daughter calls me up one day and she says, Dad, I want Adobe Photoshop. Okay, you guys probably are aware of Adobe Photoshop. Amazing product. Have you ever tried to download it on your laptop? Almost impossible. Okay, unless you're a high technology guy. And my daughter calls me up and I say to her, why do you want it? She says, well, Dad, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a fine artist. I'm doing a lot of photography. I want to go to a fine art school. By the way, she was at Skidmore for the last 2 years, just transferred to Pratt. She's a fine art, she's an oil painter. And she also is big into photography. So I said, okay, well, then that's a good reason. Let's do it. And then the divorced dad part came out, and she's like, Dad, but Mom says you're going to try to get a pirated version to save money. I want the real Adobe version. So I said, great. Come on over.
You would never do anything.
Never.
Never.
So I said, especially in this case, believe me, because I know what I'm dealing with. And I said, come on over, let's get you the Adobe. We'll do it together. So she said, it's not your night. I said, well, it won't take a long time. I'm doing something for you. She comes over, and we're trying to download Adobe, and it's almost impossible. And all we're getting is error messages. And I'm going to the 800 number, and I'm getting, it's after 6 o'clock. Sorry, call back tomorrow. And the text is going off every 5 minutes from my mom saying, it's not Dad's night. Why aren't you coming home? And my daughter's getting all stressed out. So what do? I go to Twitter. And I very politely, the way I most times, and by the way, I didn't even tag Adobe because I wasn't looking for that. I wanted Eric Vidal to help me, or John Andrews, one of my buddies who gets tech, and I said, can anybody help me get Adobe Photoshop downloaded? I'm here with my daughter and having a crisis. Within 7 minutes, I got replies from 10 Adobe employees across the globe in 10 different walks of life. There were technology guys, there were sales guys, there were customer service, I mean everybody. They were listening. I didn't even do add Adobe. I just mentioned the word Adobe. And within seconds, they realized they were watching the tweets and I was talking to multiple. One of them narrowed it down. And by the way, they were so highly trained. I don't know if many companies can afford this. You want to know what each one of them wrote to me? How can we help you? How can we help you? How hard is it to train your employee to say, how can I help you? How can I be of service to you? What can I do to make your situation better? So this doesn't take build.
But this is after hours.
This is after hours. This is building brand advocates. This is getting people to love your brand. They told me what to do. They made an appointment with me offline. They asked me to ask my daughter when she'd be back because she had to go home. I found a time. By the way, it took over an hour to get that damn thing downloaded, but they did it for me. And they did it via social media in a matter of minutes. And they made me feel great. And they made me look to my daughter like, look, honey, this guy works for Adobe.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and JetBlue does this remarkably well. JetBlue is not solving your problems with social media or with any other customer service if a flight can't take off from LaGuardia because of weather. If your bags were sent to Arizona instead of to Seattle. But what they can do is be responsive, to listen, to make you feel like somebody hears you. And they do a remarkable job of that. And they have rebuilt their entire brand. They built brand advocates all over the country by simply engaging people. Think of that. Imagine that.
Wow. Yeah, that's it kind of goes back to what you said about you giving though as well. People who don't know Ted, he gives a lot, and so you're constantly giving and giving. So you got back 7 people or 10 people
and
connecting
then,
within 7 minutes.
Right, and don't be afraid to tell people, to ask your brand advocates what they want.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? What would make it better? This guy said to me, I got 3 more tweets saying, you know, I know your daughter left about half an hour ago. Is there anything else we can do for you? Is there anything else you need? I mean, they didn't have to do that. They weren't being paid extra to do that. First of all, one of the best places to find brand advocates is within your own company because your employees are already working for you. Almost every employee that I've ever found wants to love their company. If you give them a reason to do that, if you make it easy for them, if you give them opportunities to grow, if you don't worry about them outgrowing their job and leaving your company. Great slide, a lot of you guys have probably seen it. It says, CFO says to CEO, what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO says to CFO, what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah, I know, I've seen that.
I mean, amazing company, American Express. I've met, in my career, I'm 57 years old, I'm an old guy. I've probably met hundreds of ex-American Express employees. I've never heard not one say a bad word about the company. Because they support them. Because even when they let them go, they give them support in finding a new job, they give them a place to work for a while, they make them feel good, they make them better when they leave than when they joined.
Yeah.
So I say to companies now, you know, to your employees, help them, don't just say, here, share this. Don't just make it easy for them. Help them build their influence. Surface experts in your company. There's a remarkable company called Brightmore Group, run by a guy named David Garrison, a good buddy of mine.
Brightmore?
Brightmore, B-R-Y-T-E-M-O-O-R-E. And one of their lines of business, David built a consulting division at Edelman. He started Brightmore, he was doing a lot of what he was doing at Edelman, but he discovered that most companies don't know who their experts are. So he's figured out ways to surface those people, but more importantly, support them in becoming better experts and becoming more important. But you could be doing that outside your company. Wells Fargo is now doing a great job of reaching out to influencers, helping them become better, not just saying, do this for us, but here's what we can do for you. Beyond just paying, and I'm not saying you don't pay, but you know, look, if I get 2 guys.
But that's a nice approach. What can we do to help you?
What can we do to help you?
As opposed to a mass email.
And we want to find something that fits correctly into your brand.
Yeah.
Because then it's going to be authentic. So if you're just out there pitching something, you know, look, there's nothing wrong with celebrities, okay? It's great to attach to your brand. If you do it the right way, the right time, with the right celebrity, it can help you skyrocket your brand. But bottom line, nobody believes what a celebrity is saying about using that product. There's not a woman in America, or probably not as many as there are, who actually think they're going to look like Andy McDowell if they buy and use L'Oreal cosmetics. But they are going to believe if their next door neighbor, Lori, says, hey, my God, I got this stuff. Or they see Lori and they go, oh my God, you look great. What are you doing? I'm using L'Oreal. I have this new beauty regimen. Or they're gonna watch Andy McDowell get her makeup done by a professional makeup artist and say, I can't do that, I don't have the time, the money, the space. But if they watch a friend on the train, on their way into the city, do a video, even if it's shaking, of how to put on smoky eye, they're gonna know they can do that too.
Speaking of listening, engaging, we have some people asking questions.
Okay.
Can you stick around for a little bit of Q&A?
I would love to do some Q&A.
Ted, thank you for your time on brand advocacy. We're going to go to Q&A.